Hey there, everyone. Donna Hoffman here, your interior design advocate and your advocate in all things design. If it's Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern, we love to hop out here, stop everything that we're doing at the design studio, and come out here and give a quick lesson on design, take your questions on that lesson as well. We love being able to support you in design because we know that so many of you are feeling like you're Pinteresting yourselves to death and you're housing yourselves to death and you're Instagramming yourselves to death. And after a while, you get into this information overload. It's so easy to be excited by something when you tear it out of a magazine and you make this big file, or if you start putting together idea books on house, and then it comes time to actually work on your home and you think, holy smokes, how am I going to dig through all of this? So I love being able to spend time with you. And certainly when the Facebook Live is over, I don't come back in and answer questions. So if you have a question about the topic I'm teaching about, definitely put it in as soon as you arrive. And the topic for today is all about the return of wallpaper. And I have to laugh because when I posted that that's what I was going to be talking about, a couple of people left messages like, yeah, not in my home, and yeah, LOL, and what the fabric bolt kept it clean for you. So here's the story. If you're not a wallpaper person, let the trend go. But if you have been looking at it thinking, I want to take a walk on the wild side, I'm going to be giving you some tips for designing with wallpaper. I'm not going to get into the structure function portion of wallpaper, the different types of paper and where you put them. I want to dive in with you on the design side because there is a lot for you to think about, and it is an expensive additional flourish in your spaces. So if you have a wallpaper design question, by all means put it in. So here's what I want you to know about using wallpaper. So first of all, when you are creating a fabric plan in a room, you're definitely thinking about how that fabric moves through the space, right? What kind of rhythms or harmonies you're making. That's really, as a designer, what we think about. So when you consider fabric, there are 3 layers of fabric you have to worry about when you're making your fabric decisions. Same thing with wallpaper. And you have to know what those 3 layers are. So first of all, you need to think about the color you need or are working with on that paper. The texture, do you want shine, or do you want something matte or something slubby? Or do you want something that is somewhere in the middle? And beyond color, beyond texture, you have to consider pattern. And with pattern, you have to consider how big is the pattern? What's the repeat of the pattern? So just as you do with a piece of fabric, you have to know what your fabric repeat is. I had a private group coaching session with some of my more advanced design lover students last night, and one of my very talented students said, hey, did I blow it on these window treatments because my fabric repeat is longer than the valance I created. So a repeat is how long it takes for a pattern to repeat itself, both north and south, which is your vertical repeat, as well as horizontally. That's your horizontal, or east-west, which is your horizontal repeat. So with wallpaper, if you are doing some of the little project suggestions that I'll be giving you in a moment, yeah, you better be careful about the repeat. Or if you're putting it in a powder room, a small space, you want to make sure that you have enough room for this big repeat to happen. Let's say you love a muraled wallpaper. May not work in a powder room very easily because you don't have enough space for the pattern to repeat itself. So don't want to get into a whole lesson on fabrics and pattern repeats and so forth, but what I do want you to know with your wallpaper, consider it as part of your fabric plan. And even if you're doing area rugs where pattern, color, and texture are concerned, make sure that you are respecting pattern scale in terms of how everything is sitting together. Okay, so pattern, color, texture. So how can you use wallpaper? So here's the story. We've been told here in the interior design industry, professional world, paper's coming back. I've been hearing that for nine and a half years. Well, finally, we start to see design consumers really biting into it and chewing into it and having a really good time. So what do you do if you want to dip your toe in the water? Do you have to do an entire room? I'm going to say no, you don't. Here are some things you can do whether you rent or own. And we're going to start at the bottom of the staircase in terms of cost and simplicity, and then we'll go more and more complicated. And again, if you're just joining and you have a question about how to use wallpaper in your design thinking, feel free to add that, type that out, and I'll make sure I get to your questions as best as I can before I sign out from this by Facebook Live. But I won't be checking back to answer questions after I close out the live, okay? So get your questions in. So here are some ways that you can use wallpaper if you've been thinking, I'm not minding this wallpaper thing. I want to hop on. Well, the lowest cost way you can do it, and a very non-permanent way you can use wallpaper that looks amazing. You can wallpaper the inside back of a bookcase. Great look. Whether you want to do just a texture like a grass cloth or maybe a crushed quartz, or whether you want to do something in a really cool pattern. Really easy way to get wallpaper into a room if you don't own and you want to still get something with that cool pattern on the wall surface. Do the back of a bookcase. You can also do some interesting things framing wallpaper. Yes, you can. Now, certainly, if you own your home and you have picture frame molding and you want to wallpaper on the inside of that, you can, kind of a French look. But you can do something in a fairly modern interior as well. You can do these oversized picture frames behind, let's say, a sofa. We're doing that in a project right now. And we took a really cool, oversized, graphic, geometric print, and we're just putting it inside these 3 large picture frames instead of it literally molding when I say picture frame. So no artwork needed behind this sofa because this wallpaper flourish is the thing. But anyway, if you are not a homeowner and you are renting, why couldn't you frame really large swaths of wallpaper and just hang that behind your sofa or behind your bed in your apartment? You certainly could. And then when you move, you take it with you. So the costs there will certainly be, your framing cost will be way more than your wallpaper product cost, but same thing as if you framed a poster. The poster is not where you're going to be putting all the money. The cost in framing is always the glass, the type of glass you use, and the type of framing, and the amount of all of it as well. So lower cost ways to use wallpaper the back of a bookcase, or do some framing. Make a beautiful vignette of some a stack of 3, do your own triptych or your own diptych, or you can do a grid of 6 really cool square 18 by 18 squares of a wallpaper that you really love. And that could be how you use wallpaper. Another way you can use wallpaper certainly is just to do an accent wall. Now, if you're going to do an accent wall, just make sure that it makes sense with the architecture of the room. Generally speaking, you want that accent wall to be the focal wall, or to support driving that focal wall. Or if you're in a room that doesn't have a really interesting architectural feature, maybe you have an office that's sort of a loft space in your home, and you want to do something interesting. It's, fairly open on 2 sides, and you've got one, major wall in that space. By all means, you can paper it and do something really fun and splashy there. Something else that we've been seeing a lot at some of the better design show houses, ceilings are being wallpapered to wonderful effect. So whether you want to do something that is covering the entire ceiling, or whether you want to add some trim, maybe 18 inches around on your ceiling, and then you can just paper on the inside, really, really cool look. Again, be sure that you're careful of your repeats, your pattern repeats, and the scale of anything that you're doing if you are adding any sort of print. And if you are going to do anything overhead on a ceiling, make sure you look at your swatch up overhead of your wallpaper, because the way a color, and as well as a wallpaper color, looks when you're holding it on the vertical will change when you're holding it overhead and looking at it. So it's even a good idea when you're looking at paint swatches for a ceiling. I always tell my students, lift your deck, look up over your head so you can see how everything changes, and it really basically just sort of grays down. So not only can you just do a flourish with just, an accent wall, or you can certainly do a ceiling, or then, of course, if the dollars are there and the budget is there, and you're not moving anytime soon, by all means, you can paper an entire room. I have to tell you, there is so much happening in wallpapers now, from these wonderful grand murals to these great metallic crushed quartz papers to these great crushed quartz and cork looking papers to really geometric mid-scale prints to big, bold geometrics. There are certainly still grass cloths out there, and that's how some of you have been dipping your toe in the wallpaper order, but there are also some great printed grass cloths. So by that I mean, imagine a beautiful grass cloth, and then on top of that is a printed, I don't know, damask or a printed geometric something. That's kind of like what we're doing in this kind of fun, funky living room that we're working on. So when it comes to wallpaper, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. Doesn't mean you have to cover every surface of your home with it. I was talking to a student this week who said, gee, I've got an open concept home, but my dining room has a little bit of an alcovey feeling, and I want to do something a little different there, but I don't necessarily want to change my wall color. So I said, well, what if, hang on, I have an itch. What if you did an interesting textured paper just up on your ceiling, just in that little dining room alcove, just to offset that room just a little bit? And it doesn't even have to have or be a big difference from the paint color. It can just be more about the story of that texture changing, okay? So I know I saw some groans in some of the comments that were left when I said, hey, wallpaper's coming back. Don't be afraid of wallpaper. If you want to just dip your toe in the water, and you know what? You can dip your toe in the water in a space that you don't spend a lot of time in. You can definitely dip your toe in the water in a little powder room. So it's just really more of a little bit of a jewel box for you and your guests, and then you move on. Now, here's the thing I do want you to know. I recommend that you use a professional installer. You want to make sure that those seams are really well done, particularly with grass cloth. Please, fair warning to everyone, if you love grass cloth, you will see the seams. You have organic product. The grasses literally are going to be abutting each other at the seam, and it's not man-made, so it's not a perfect continuation from one section of paper to the next. You will see those seams. That's how a purist can walk into your home and say, oh, I like your grass cloth, as opposed to, nice printed vinyl that you have up on your wall. Nothing wrong with a faux grass cloth, but I just want you to know that a characteristic of grass cloth is that you will see the seams. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, when this Facebook Live is over, I just want you to Google rooms covered in, grass cloth wallpaper, and then you'll be able to see, moving across the room, areas of lightening and darkening, and you will see that seam moving across the space. So if you are installing or having an installer put in a grass cloth, I like to talk to the installer about, okay, where are we starting the paper? Let's kind of plan where those seams are going to hit. Sometimes you can bury some of the seams behind a window treatment. Sometimes you can't, but you will see those seams. So if that's going to bother you, definitely do not even think about doing an organic grass cloth. All right, my lovelies. Well, that's pretty much everything I had to share with you about designing with wallpaper. If you have a question about designing with wallpaper, please feel free to put it in. Remember, with wallpaper, you want to, as with fabric, consider the color, the texture, the pattern. Be really careful that that is a great mesh with the fabric plan you have for your room. Don't feel like you have to just do permanent spaces like walls. You can do flourishes at the back of a bookcase. You can frame pieces of wallpaper and create your own art statements with it. And certainly if you don't want to do a full room, you can do those splashes like on a ceiling, on a focal wall, or again, experiment just in a spot where you don't have a lot of time being spent in an office, in a guest room, or in a powder room. Okay, my dears, I don't see any questions coming in. I see some wonderful hellos coming in. I can see, oh, hang on. I'll just give you some shout outs back. Hi to Nancy. Thank you so much. Hi to Kim. Hi to Sandra. Hello to Sandra P. And hello to Sandy M. Hello to Rosemary Edwards. It's so great to see you guys here. Thank you so much. I've loved being here with you. Listen, if you are looking for inspiration on interior design for your own home, we're here every single Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, and that's when we take your questions on our topic. Next week, I will be taking questions on the topic I'll be teaching about, which is about window treatments. And I'm specifically going to be talking to you about when you're house hunting and you are considering, should I buy this home or not? What's it going to cost me to furnish and fill this home? I want you to consider all the windows. Pricey. It gets very pricey to cover and treat those windows. So we'll be talking about how you can try to troubleshoot and guesstimate what those costs will be if you're going to be doing custom, if you have to do custom, if some of your windows can take non-custom two-story rooms. It gets a little funky, okay? So we'll be talking about window treatments next week. And I do see a couple of questions are coming in. Thanks to my handy-dandy sidekick, Katie, who's too shy to come out here with you. Okay, so here's Emily's question. She said, hey there, I bought some gorgeous seagrass wallpaper. Would it be best to hire someone to install, or can I DIY? Emily, please hire an excellent installer. Depending upon how thin your grass cloth is, they may even want to do something called a backing, where they will actually, it's almost like putting up a primer. You know how a painter primes a wall? Wallpaper backing is a layer of a backing paper that gets applied, and then the paper gets put over it. And in England, it's interesting. They do it a little differently for grass cloth than they do in the U.S. And I know this because I had some contractors arguing about this. All right, so imagine, Emily, that you have your grass cloth. It's a thin paper, and your installer says this should really be backed. So if your grass cloth seam is going to be here, where my two hands are meeting, they would make sure that the backing paper doesn't have the seam placed in the same place. I'll put the seam, I'll just point out in front of my hand. So this would be where the seam is, right? Not where the actual paper, face paper that you're seeing. So they try to alter where the seams are happening. But interestingly, I hope I got this right, either in the US they do it this way, or I think the English do it this way, but I think the English run their papers this way for backing, so that the backing seams are running this way and then the paper seams are running this way. So I would hate to see you screw up your grass cloth, Emily, because you had a finicky paper, and the seaming is an issue with grass cloth anyway. Like I said, you're going to see those seams, but I think it's worth hiring an installer to get it up correctly, and to get your wallpaper up correctly. And definitely, they may say, look, this doesn't need to be backed. It's a heavy enough grass cloth. I don't need to back it. Alrighty? So I would like to see you hire somebody, Emily. I hate throwing good money after bad. I hate correcting mistakes in design. It gets really, really costly. And I'd love to see a picture of what you come up with when your room is all done. So post a picture on our Facebook group, okay? So I get to see it, and everybody else can give you a cheers. All right, good luck to you, Nancy, on that. Okay, Wendy says, what do you think about the new removable wallpaper? Worth the cost? You know, Wendy, I really haven't even tried it. Have you tried any of the removable wallpapers? Katie's saying she has. What'd you think about it there, KT? She's giving me thumbs in the middle, not thumbs up. And Katie's usually like an exuberant person, so if she's giving you thumbs in the middle, that's almost a down. Not easy to work with?
Yeah.
Not easy to work with. Did it stay up?
It stays up. You just got to
stays up, but you got to do your research, and you have to do the right brand. And Katie is saying this, and I am like, you know, when kids would copy you, stop copying me. I'm literally saying what Katie's saying as she's saying it. She's laughing now. Okay, that's it. So I personally cannot tell you anything about it. And I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I am not crafty. I design it, but I don't do it. I was very nicely asked to leave a sewing room when I was in grad school. They loved my company. They said, come in here and talk anytime, but please don't make anything. And I was also in college asked to leave a wood shop, never to return. The chairman of a department, told me how talented he thought I was in other areas, but not around drills and saws. So I'm not a crafty girl, so I can't help you in terms of the DIY side of those things, but thank heavens for Katie. So you are welcome. Emily is saying, thank you so much. Oh, recommendations on finding a good installer. Oh, Emily. A lot of painters do both. They'll paint and install wallpapers. You know, painters are excellent, the good ones, at wall prep. And having a really well prepped wall, especially if you have a thin paper, very important. So a lot of paper hangers are also painters. They do both. What I would do, Emily, is I would ask around. I would call a design society, maybe the ASID or the IDS in your area, and say, hey, do you have any recommendations of wallpaper installers that are well thought of in this region? You can ask a local builder if they have a wallpaper installer that they know, like, and trust. You can ask a local realtor if you have a relationship there. Do you know somebody you know, like, and trust? Can't really ask a designer. They don't tend to like sharing their resources. I could talk about why some other time, but I wouldn't call a design company and ask that question. I don't think you're going to make any friends there. But I would also ask at the wallpaper store where you're looking at your wallpapers. Say, hey, do you have an area guy or two or three? And interview people. Don't just call the first person. Don't take the lowest cost bid. Interview, vet. Ask them, what's the worst thing that ever happened to you on a job? What'd you do to fix it? Do you have any work that I can go see right now that, of a job you installed either this year or last year? Definitely references. If they're working on something currently, can I come, see the job site that you're working on so I can see what your seaming looks like? So I would do some, and of course, you're going to ask any references, tough questions. Did anything happen on the job that you weren't happy with? If so, what did they do to correct it? Sometimes things do happen that don't go as people prefer, but it's what does that subcontractor do to fix it? Wallpaper hangers have to make sure that the paper that you order comes in properly, that there are no damages, and when they unroll it, they have to make sure they haven't cut anything before they've inspected it, because if there's a damage on your roll, but the roll's been cut, you're out of luck. Most manufacturers will say, sorry, you're out of warranty, you cut it. So you really want to talk to the wallpaper installer about, what are your roles and responsibilities? What are my roles and responsibilities as your client? What kind of protections do you offer for your work? So hopefully that should get you started. But I think starting with your wallpaper store is a really good way too to find the names of some installers. Okay, so hopefully that helps you. And that's a great question. Thank you for that. Jennifer is saying hello. All right, well, that's terrific. Hello to you too, Jennifer. Katie's telling me it's time to wrap it up, so I'm going to tell you we have time for one more question. If you want to scooch that in, great. If not, we're going to wrap it up. Again, next week we are going to be talking about window coverings when you're house hunting. When you're looking at a new home, I don't care how big it is, a townhouse, a small home, a large home, a giant McMansion, I guarantee you are underestimating how much to estimate for your window coverings, okay? So that's an important discussion. We're going to be talking about window coverings. Next week, I'll be taking your questions on those as well. If you have any other questions for today, you can get them in. Sounds like we've kind of covered them for the day. If you've liked this Facebook Live, please give us a share, and definitely give us a follow on Instagram at decorating.genius. That's at decorating.genius, so we can keep you inspired, keep teaching you, keep protecting you, and keep taking good care of you. Okay, my lovelies, looks like we're all wrapped up for today. We'll see you next Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern, when we talk about window coverings and their costs relative to that new home you're buying. See you later.